Hello, my name is Aviva, and today I wanted to share with you a bunch of book recommendations where the girl main character is a virgin. So this isn't a trope that I necessarily specifically seek out, but it is something that I've noticed does come up often in a lot of the books that I read. And I don't say it lightly of oh, she's randomly a virgin. It's actually part of her personality trait, and it's a very heavy part of the story for all the books that I'm going to be sharing with you today. I'm not sharing with you random YA books where it's just oh, that's the age and it's just going to randomly happen. This is actually a big part of her personality. It's a big part of the story. Maybe she's a loner and she's just never had the opportunity to be with a guy before. Or maybe she's really OCD and she's just never found someone that she wants to give herself to. Or maybe she's just a super prude or something along those lines where it's a really big part of her. And throughout the story, you're going to get to see that whole mentality of her shift, and she's going to turn from a virgin to not virgin. So I feel that is something that a lot of people can not only relate to, but they might actually be seeking out when they're trying to pick out a book because they just want to read about something like that. So if you are someone like that, then today I have got you covered with a bunch of book recommendations. And the first one I'm going to be sharing with you is a recent favorite book of mine, and that is Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. So this is a very, very large book. It's almost 600 pages, and it feels more like 1,000 pages. And this is actually only part one to the story. So it is a very big commitment to, decide to want to read this book. But if you are willing to commit and put the time into it, oh my God, this is an amazing, amazing story. So I first have to say that you definitely have to look up trigger warnings for this book. There's a lot of stuff like bullying, abuse, rape, anxiety, things along those lines. It's a very heavy and deep and disturbing book in a sense, but it is really, really good if you are okay with all that sort of stuff. So this is basically about this girl who is a loner, and she was bullied in her previous school really badly, up to the point where her parents pulled her out of school and put her into this private school. And when she gets there, she basically meets the popular guy in school that happens to be a very big rugby prodigy sort of guy, and it's going to be their romance. So it's very guy falls first and he falls harder, and it's also very protective and obsessive. This guy meets this girl and he kind of finds out about her history of how she's been bullied, and he basically protects her. He becomes her bodyguard. He gets very obsessed with her and basically will hurt anybody that tries to bully her or anything like that. And it is a really amazing story in that sense, and happens to be because she was bullied in her past and she's a loner, she's the outcast, everything like that. A big part of her is that she's never really had anything with a guy before, and you're going to get to follow her story of her falling for her having a first love sort of situation. So this is a duet, and in the first book she's going to be a virgin the whole time. It doesn't really happen until the second book. So if you're down for a very, very slow burn, then I highly recommend checking this one out. This is really probably going to be one of my favorite reads of the year. So yeah, I highly, highly recommend this book. But if you don't want to commit to something this long and you want that sort of style still, then you might want to check out A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime by Monica Murphy. So this is still a little bit of a big book. It's still pretty thick. I think it's 400 and something pages. Yeah, almost 500 pages actually, but this is a standalone, and it kind of has a similar situation. So this is it's set in high school. It's set in a private school, again, very rich, wealthy type of private school. And basically, the main girl is the popular girl in school, but she is a very big prude. She's very oh, I wear a purity ring, I'm celibate, everybody should be celibate until marriage, that sort of situation. And then she's gonna end up having a romance with the popular guy in school who happens to be the bad boy, the playboy, everything like that. They're going to get set up in a class to do a project together, and they're basically going to end up, having a very slow romance. So it's a very, very cute story. And in this book, it's funny because the only thing that actually kind of bothered me about this book, right when I started it, was that the girl was a virgin and she was very, very prude. She was prude level 3,000, to the point where it actually was a little bit bothering me. But then throughout the story, you started to realize that she was changing, and the way that she started to think for herself, make her own decisions, and basically decide that maybe she doesn't want to be the person that she used to be. And then obviously she's going to flip that switch with this guy. And I really, really enjoyed seeing that transition in her. So if you're a really big fan of seeing that as well, someone turn from a very big prude into someone who's just going to do what she wants because that's how she feels, then this is definitely going to be the story for you. I absolutely loved this book, and again, I highly recommend it. But if you're not into, high school sort of setting things, then maybe you wanted to check out Forbidden by Carla Sorensen. So this is the fourth book in the Ward Sisters Companion series, and you can read them as all standalones, but happens to be, I've read like 3 out of the 4 books in this series, and I gave all of them 5 stars. So I highly recommend checking all of them out, but I even read them out of order, so it doesn't really matter like which one you pick up. But either way, in this book specifically, she is a virgin. She is, I forgot how old she is, but she's basically going to end up having an age gap forbidden-ish sort of romance with her new boss. So she works as like, I think a manager at this like boxing gym, and this ex-MMA fighter is going to purchase the gym and he's going to be her new boss. And the only thing about it is that she actually knows who this guy is because she had a massive crush on him growing up. And he happens to be a widow and a single dad, and he's much older than her. So it's got all of that stuff going on for it. And it happens to be, for the size of this book, it is a pretty slow burn. Like, it does take a while for anything to happen with them, even though it's very like angsty and tension filled. Like, it's very tension throughout the whole thing, but until they actually like do anything, it doesn't happen until the end of the book. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the story. And it happens to be this girl, like, her personality just isn't very like out there. So she's never really had like, the pull to want to be with anybody until she meets this guy who she had a crush on forever. Like, no one was ever able to like match up to him in her head, and therefore she's never been with anybody. And then she meets him, and then she's going to be able to get to like be with him. You know what I mean? So very cute story, very cute story. Highly recommend. And yeah, I gave this book 5 stars. So please check this book out. But anyway, after this, I also wanted to share with you Kiss the Sky and Whatever It Takes by Krista and Becca Ritchie. So this is part of the Addicted Calloway universe. This technically is the 5th book if you're reading them in the order that like the authors recommend. But also this is kind of like the first book in the Calloway sister series. So, I mean, this is a very big series and I talk about it all the time. So I feel like I don't necessarily need to mention it, like explain exactly what it is, but you're following like a lot of characters. There's going to be 3 different romances with throughout this friend group of 6 people, and basically this is Rose and Connor's story. And Rose specifically is like very OCD, very like I can't really explain her, you just gotta like get to know her, but basically she is a virgin, and throughout this book she is finally going to get with Connor, who is going to be like her partner, and it is a very, very good story. So it is a big part of her personality, and I definitely think that you should definitely start from like book 1, which is Addicted to You. I'll have an entire video of like how to read this series, what it's about, everything along those lines, and like everything you need to know about this series. I'll have a video for it linked down below. But basically, even though this isn't the first book in a series, I still highly recommend checking it out if you are into those type of heroines. And then happens to be Whatever It Takes is a spin-off somewhat of this series. It's kind of like throughout the later books in the series, you're going to get to meet these characters, and happens to be, I'm pretty sure, no, not both of the characters, but just this girl. She is a virgin as well, and you're kind of going to get to see their story like in the later books, but they also do get their like personal duet. So like you get to see them throughout the end, and then you also get to like get their own story, if that makes sense. So I'm making this so much more confusing than it has to be, but basically, if you like virgin heroines, then the Addicted / Calloway Sister series has 2 of them for you. So yeah, check out the video linked down below in case you want to know more about this. But anyway, let's move on from that because I just made that so much more confusing than it has to be. But next up, I have Come Back to Me by Mila Gray. So this is, I think, the only YA book in this entire stack, or maybe this is new adult. I don't really remember like what the vibes were, but basically in this story, you're following a brother's best friend situation. So her brother is in the military, and he has a best friend who is in the military as well. And one day they come home on leave. I think they're going to be home for like a month or so. And then she finally basically like confesses her feelings to her brother's best friend. And then she finds out that he actually felt the same way. So while they're home on leave, they're going to have a romance. And it starts out where she's a virgin, because I think it's just like kind of like the age sort of thing. Like, she happens to be a virgin. I don't know if he is or not, but either way, this is a really good story. It's a little bit more hard hitting. There is trigger warnings for loss of a very close person to you, and I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything more than that. But basically, this book was a really, really cute romance, but there also was a moment where I really wanted to cry. So yeah, with that said, go into it knowing that, but it is an amazing, amazing story, and I do highly recommend it. And then happens to be, if you enjoy this book, there are 4 more books in this companion series where you're just following like different romances, and I really enjoyed the entire series. So yeah, check out the Come Back to Me series by Mila Gray. But after this, I wanted to share with you Under Lock by Mariana Zapata. So this is a motorcycle club romance, and you're following this girl who gets a job with her brother's friend. Like, her brother's in the motorcycle club, and she gets a job with one of the people that are in the club who happens to own a tattoo shop, and it's going to be their romance. So she's the new receptionist, and he is the owner of the shop, and they're going to have a very slow burn Mariana Zapata style romance. And happens to be, this isn't as a slow burn as her other books, but it is still like slow burn in the general sense. And she's a virgin. I think she's like 25 years old though. And to be very honest with you, I cannot exactly remember why she is a virgin. I think that like a part of her thing was that like she was sick when she was younger. So I guess she never really had the opportunity to, you know, be with anybody because she was dealing with like other things in her life. But now she's better. She's in recovery, and I guess she's going to meet this guy and things are going to change for her. So I really, really enjoyed this story by Mariana Zapata. So I highly recommend checking it out as well. And then after this, I also wanted to share with you Make Me Bad by R.S. Gray. So this is one of those good girl, bad boys situations. So like this girl, she's like working in the library, and her father happens to be like the sheriff of this small town. And because of that, she's always grown up with people like kind of being scared to get close to her because she has like brothers, and she also has this father that like basically like protect her all the time. So guys have never really gotten close to her. So she's never had the opportunity to do anything scandalous like whatsoever. And then one day this guy ends up getting community service. He is like the very wealthy guy in the town, and he ends up like, I forgot why he got community service. He could have gotten out of it, but he's like, nah, I don't want to like, you know, pull my strings or whatever. So he takes it, and he ends up working at the library where this girl is working at, and they're going to be working together. And then she's kind of just gonna like be like, oh, you know what, I like hanging out with you. Any chance you would want to like make me bad, because I know that you are like, you know, out there and you do all these type of things, and I've never had the opportunity to do it, so will you help me? And he basically decides to do that, and then they're going to fall for each other. So I mean, it's definitely that good girl bad boy situation, a little bit of a prude thing going on, and it's a great story, very quick, easy read, and I really enjoyed it when I read it. I read it like a year ago, so if it's not good now, then you know, my taste might have changed, but I do think that it still will live up to my recommendation. So yeah, maybe check this one out if you want a quick, easy read. But after this, I also wanted to share with you Darling Venom by Parker Hesse Huntington. So this is one of those books where you got to look up trigger warnings for. It is a little bit of like a heavier situation because you are dealing with depression and suicide. This story starts out where this girl meets this guy the night that she was about to commit suicide, and he was about to commit suicide as well. So they kind of make this pact that they're going to meet at that spot every single year just to check in on each other and like make sure that they're both okay. And then one year this girl is late, and the guy ends up, you know, doing what he was planning on doing. And then a couple of years later, this girl ends up meeting the guy who, you know, offed himself's brother, and it's going to be their romance. So happens to be a big part of this story is that this girl is a virgin. I think it's an age gap. So like she was much younger. I forgot how young she was though. Maybe she was like 21 or 24, something along those lines. But basically the brother was older. So it is an age gap. And it is very much where the girl is a virgin, because I remember there being like a bunch of scenes in this where it's like, you know, she's never done that before, and then she gets into a situation with this guy, and he doesn't want to take advantage of her, but like stuff ends up happening. So basically, yeah, if you are into that sort of thing, then I highly recommend checking it out. It isn't the entire part of this story. Like, this story is dealing with a lot of other things, mainly about the stuff that I just warned you about, but it is a part of her personality trait. So yeah, maybe you would enjoy this book. So yeah, Darling Venom by Parker Hesse Huntington. But anyway, I have two more recommendations for you that I just want to say right now, I did not personally enjoy, but I know that a lot of people really do love these books. So I'm mentioning them very quickly anyway, because even though they didn't work for me, they might work for you, and they do happen to fit into this category. So with that said, the first one is The Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan. So this is the first book in the All the King's Men duet, and this is one of those right person, wrong time love stories. So you're following these two people who meet like multiple times throughout the years, and it's just never their right time. And like every time that they meet, they just like grow their connection more and more, and then eventually they're going to like have their right time. And happens to be the first time that these two people meet, this girl was underage. Like she was 16 and he was like 20 something. So he liked her, but he couldn't do anything about it because like, you know, it was just like not their right time. And then they meet years and years later in a bar one time, and then they actually get their chance to be together. But then something something else pulls them apart, and then it's going to be a couple of years after that until they actually get their like, next chance of sorts. And then this is the first part in a duet, so you do have to read the second book. And why this book didn't work for me is because I'm not very into long time period books, and I also don't love the idea of right person, wrong time. I just don't love seeing the whole like, it takes forever for them to get together and things are pulling them apart. It's a very like angsty, tension-filled sort of vibe, and it just doesn't personally work for me. But if it does work for you, then maybe you'd want to check this one out. So yeah, The Kingmaker by Kennedy Ryan. But my last recommendation, the reason why this didn't work for me is because it is kind of like a love triangle situation. I wanted to share with you The Heir by Sophie Lark. So this is the first book in her Kingmaker series. It's like a mafia, private school, Hogwarts vibes sort of romance. All these kids are part of like mafia families. They're going to be going to this private school that is basically going to teach them about how to be a better mafia person, And then in this story specifically, you're following these two people who have been best friends since they were children. They go to this school, and then there's going to end up being a love triangle of sorts. And it happens to be in this book specifically, both of them are virgins, and eventually they're going to get together, and then, they're going to be virgins no longer. So I didn't like this book for a couple of reasons. And one of the big reasons was because it was very love triangle-y. But if that is something that's not going to bother you, then maybe you'd want to check it out. So yeah, The Heir by Sophie Lark. Also, if you do like this book, then you can also read the story about like all of these people's parents, which is the Brutal Birthright series. And I actually really enjoyed the majority of that series. So yeah, just check out some Sophie Lark. She's got good stuff going for her. But anyway, that is the last book that I wanted to share with you. So with that said, leave some comments down below if you have any more recommendations that fit into this category. I'm always down for good recs. So yeah, if you have any for me, then leave me a comment. Also, if you enjoyed watching this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you're not currently subscribed. And either way, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. And until next time, enjoy reading.